Alarms were already blaring when Charles Vega slammed his palm on the glass table. "Shut those screens off now," he barked. They didn't shut off. Across every monitor, in blood-red text, the words blinked: state licenses expired, insurance void, Pinnacle Solutions. The company worth $320 million had gone dark. Executives shouted over one another. Projects are frozen in 14 states. Legal can't process claims. Everything's locked out. Sales just called. They've lost $3 million in pending deals. Charles's voice cut through the chaos. Who was in charge of compliance? Every face turned toward the same man at the end of the table, Derek Hastings, the new VP. His tie was loosened, his phone shaking in his hand. "She was," he said finally, voice cracking. "Evelyn Mercer." The room went silent. Someone whispered, "Where is she now?" 7 miles away, I stood at my kitchen counter, waiting for the coffee to finish brewing. The world outside my window was calm sunlight on the neighbor's driveway, a single bird crossing the glass reflection of the sky. My phone vibrated against the counter again and again, the sound small but urgent. I didn't reach for it. The smell of dark roast filled the room. I poured a cup, stirred in sugar, and watched the swirl disappear. On the table sat a neat stack of folders color-coded, labeled. The same system I'd built at Pinnacle Solutions. The same system Derek had called unnecessary bureaucracy. I'd spent 8 years keeping that company compliant, 8 years of reminders, renewals, signatures. Then, 3 weeks ago, he laughed while firing me. "We don't need dead weight," he said, smiling for the HR rep. Now his voice was somewhere inside that boardroom, probably shouting my name while the walls fell in around him. Murphy, my golden retriever, stretched on the floor, oblivious to the storm behind those phone calls. I set my cup down, turned the phone face down, and let the vibration fade to silence. 3 weeks ago, that laughter had stung. This morning, it echoed back as the sound of consequence, and it all began with a cup of cold coffee. 3 weeks earlier, the coffee in the conference room had already gone cold, a thin film across the surface catching the fluorescent light. I sat across from Derek Hastings, the new vice president of operations, who leaned back in the chair that used to belong to my old supervisor, Patricia. He wore his confidence like cologne strong enough to choke a room. "We're restructuring," he said, tapping his pen against the folder in front of him. "Streamlining processes, cutting redundancy." He looked at me over the rim of his glasses. "Evelyn, you're good at what you do, but compliance isn't a growth department. We don't need dead weight." Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound that filled the sterile air between us. I remember thinking how strange it was to hear someone laugh while they ended another person's career. HR sat beside him, her hands folded neatly over a stack of exit paperwork. She didn't meet my eyes. My palms rested on the polished table, steady, deliberate. "You're firing me!" He shrugged. "Let's call it repositioning." I could smell the lemon cleaner from the hallway, the faint buzz of the lights overhead. Everything about the room felt manufactured, too clean, too bright, too false. "I see," I said. I pushed my chair back slowly so it wouldn't scrape. "Then I'll collect my things." Derek was already looking at his phone, scrolling through messages. "HR will send the details. You know how it goes." I did. I had written most of those procedures myself. When I walked out, the air in the hallway felt cooler, almost sharp against my skin. I passed cubicles filled with people pretending not to see. My desk waited at the far end by the window, a small plant, a mug that said "World's Okayest Compliance Officer," and a framed photo of my dog, Murphy, with his tongue out. I packed slowly, careful to leave the drawers organized. The renewal folders read for state licenses. Blue for insurance, green for federal filings stayed in place, tabs aligned. Everything labeled and ready, like I might walk back in tomorrow. No one said goodbye. When the elevator doors closed, I watched my reflection in the brushed steel. My face looked calm, almost detached. It wasn't pride I felt. It was precision, an old habit I couldn't turn off. even as the doors opened to the lobby and the life I no longer had. That evening, the quiet in my apartment felt heavier than usual. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, steady and low, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. I set the small cardboard box from the office on the kitchen table, my mug, the photo of Murphy, a few pens, and stared at it for a long time before opening my laptop. The login screen glowed against the dim room. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard, then typed my password by instinct. Old habits don't die easily. I scrolled to a folder labeled Pinnacle Insurance and Licensing, 8 years of emails, attachments, spreadsheets, and notes that no one else had ever fully understood. Inside were color-coded subfolders organized by year. I clicked the newest one. Each message felt like a breadcrumb leading back through time payment confirmations, state filings, signed renewals, policy updates. Every one of them bore my name in the CC line, and every renewal shared one date, October 1st. It was only 3 weeks away. I opened the most recent email chain. The subject line read, Q4 Compliance Renewals Urgent. I had sent it to Derek on September 3rd, attaching all the spreadsheets, deadlines, and account numbers. I had even written the final reminder in bold red text. Failure to renew will result in immediate suspension of operating authority in all licensed states. He had replied, 3 words. Noted, will handle. I clicked into my sent folder. There were follow-ups on the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th, each one more explicit. Each one met with silence or a single-line brush-off. The final message had gone out less than 24 hours before I was fired. My cursor hovered over the screen for a long moment. The coffee on my table had gone cold again. Murphy lay at my feet, breathing slow and deep, completely unaware that somewhere downtown, a company's future was now balanced on a date circled in red. I closed the laptop gently. The files would stay exactly where they were, untouched. The folders at the office would remain in perfect order, waiting. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. Some lessons, I thought, only arrive when the reminders stopped being sent. The days after I was fired settled into a rhythm I didn't expect. I woke when the light reached my window, not when my alarm demanded it. I brewed coffee in the French press I never used on work mornings because it took too long. Murphy and I walked the long route around the neighborhood, past the small park and the elementary school where children lined up with backpacks almost bigger than they were. Charlotte in early autumn felt softer than I remembered, without the rush of deadlines or morning meetings. Time stretched wide and slow. I filled it with small rituals, laundry folded straight from the dryer, floors scrubbed until the tiles shone, the spice cabinet rearranged alphabetically. Each ordinary act felt like reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. The emails began on the 3rd day. First from HR. Please confirm receipt of your separation packet. Then again, just following up to ensure transition documents were signed. I didn't reply. They weren't really asking anything that mattered. By the 2nd week, the subject lines grew thinner, more uncertain. Final reminder, clarification request, status update pending. I let them pile up. Each unread message a quiet boundary I refused to cross. At night, I read novels I'd bought years ago and never opened. Murphy slept beside me, his paws twitching against the sheets. Sometimes I'd glance at my phone, see the name of someone from the office flash across the screen, and let it ring out. The silence afterward was satisfying in a way I couldn't explain clean, deliberate, earned, outside. The trees began to turn, one leaf at a time. The air smelled faintly of rain and change. On my kitchen counter, a calendar still hung open to September. 3 weeks remained before the 1st of October. The date printed in red, circled from a year ago in my careful handwriting. Every day that passed without a call from them felt like balance restoring itself. My absence wasn't revenge. It was gravity reclaiming what had been unbalanced for far too long. It started quietly, the way most disasters do without sound. Just absence. At 12:01 a.m., while the city slept, every operating license under Pinnacle Solutions expired at once. The systems didn't crash or flash warnings. They simply stopped working. By morning, the network showed red across every state file. No one noticed right away. But by noon, the phone lines at headquarters were jammed, and legal teams were scrambling to understand why they couldn't file a single document. I was at home making breakfast when the first call came through. Unknown number. Then another, and another. My phone buzzed steadily across the counter, a rhythm I didn't recognize anymore. I glanced at the screen once Derek Hastings, then HR, then the company's main line. I let them all go to voicemail. Murphy's bowl clinked as he ate, unconcerned with the unraveling world outside. The sunlight cut through the blinds, drawing sharp lines across the kitchen floor. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the swirl fade. At 1:14 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, the name made me pause. Tom Brennan, our insurance broker. I'd worked with him for 5 years, every renewal cycle like clockwork. I answered on the fourth ring. "Evelyn," he said, voice tight. "I've been trying to reach someone at Pinnacle all morning. Your insurance policy's expired at midnight. General liability, professional coverage, everything. They can't operate without them. I've called Derek. I've called the CEO. No one's answering. What's going on over there?" I kept my tone steady. "I wouldn't know. Tom, I'm no longer with the company." A pause on the line, heavy and disbelieving. "You're kidding." "When 3 weeks ago," he exhaled hard. "Jesus, Evelyn, they're in serious trouble. If these renewals aren't processed by close of business today, they'll lose coverage in 14 states. Legally, they'll have to shut everything down." "I understand," I said softly. "Do you want me to know, Tom? It's not my place anymore." The silence stretched until he finally muttered, "Then God help them," and hung up. I stood at the window, coffee cooling in my hand, watching traffic move steadily down the street orderly, unaware. My phone began buzzing again, each call louder than the last. By evening, the sun dipped low and the screen glowed with missed calls, 27 in total. I turned the phone face down and let the world fall apart without me. The call came just after 4 in the afternoon. I was rinsing dishes, the sink still warm from the water, when the phone buzzed again. I almost didn't answer until I saw the name, Charles Vega. His voice on the other end was clipped and trembling beneath the effort to stay composed. "Evelyn, thank God. We need your help. For a moment." I said nothing. The faucet dripped softly in the background. "One drop at a time. Our systems are down," he continued, words spilling out faster. "Licenses, insurance, every active project frozen. Legal's panicking. Sales can't close a thing. We're losing money by the minute. Derek said you handled compliance. Where are the files?" I took a slow breath. "In my desk drawer. Red for state licensing, blue for insurance, green for federal filings. They're labeled. Everything you need is there. Derek says he doesn't have access to the compliance system." Charles said. "It's locked. It shouldn't be," I replied. When he took over from Patricia, the admin credentials were automatically generated and sent to his inbox. There was the sound of frantic typing on the other end, voices overlapping in the background. I could picture it clearly, the same glass boardroom, the same faces that hadn't looked up when I carried my box out 3 weeks ago. Charles's breathing grew uneven. "I'm looking now," he muttered. "Wait, there it is." Another pause. Email dated August 20th. Subject line, admin credentials for compliance management system. He archived it without opening it. I leaned against the counter, eyes on the window where sunlight was fading to amber. "Then you have your answer," I said quietly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear him exhale, a sound closer to defeat than frustration. "We're dead in the water. Evelyn." I warned him. "Charles, I warned all of you." He didn't argue. He didn't. "Can you come back? Even temporarily. We'll make it worth your while." I looked at the sink, the dishes now rinsed clean. "No," I said. "Everything you need is already in your hands." The line went silent except for the sound of muffled chaos on his end. Then he whispered, "God help us," and the call disconnected. It was nearly 9 in the morning when the knock came. Slow, deliberate, 3 firm raps against the wood that didn't sound like a neighbor or a delivery. Murphy barked once, then trotted to the door, tail uncertain. Through the frosted glass, I could see a silhouette tall, shoulders slightly hunched, a suit too formal for a weekday morning on my street. When I opened the door, Charles Vega stood on my porch. He looked older than I remembered, the sharp edges that defined him in meetings, precision-cut hair, perfect posture. A voice that filled the room were gone. His tie hung loose, and the lines around his eyes had deepened overnight. "Evelyn," he said quietly. "May I come in? I didn't move. I think we can talk right here." He nodded as if he expected that. Behind him, the morning sunlight caught on his car parked at the curb, a black sedan that looked out of place on my quiet street. He took a breath. "Derek's gone, effective immediately." I didn't respond. He ignored every warning you sent, archived the system credentials, and nearly cost us the company. The board's furious. Our investors are threatening to pull out. We've had to shut down operations in 14 states. We're hemorrhaging money. His voice cracked slightly, a sound I'd never heard from him before. "I need you back. Evelyn, as vice president of operations, $215,000 a year. Full benefits, a corner office, anything you need." I studied him through the screen door. The man who once oversaw hundreds of employees now looked like someone asking for directions. "That's not what I need," I said. He swallowed, nodded slowly, then reached into his jacket. When he spoke again, his tone was quiet but urgent. "Then at least take this." He slid an envelope through the narrow space between the screen and the frame. Inside was a check. The amount $50,000 written in careful blue ink. "1 day of consulting," he said. "Help us renew what we've lost. Show us how to fix it. After that, you never have to see us again." Murphy barked once behind me, breaking the silence. I looked down at the envelope, then back at Charles. "I'll think about it," I said, and closed the door gently. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for most of the afternoon. Untouched, I made lunch, watered the plants, walked Murphy, all while pretending not to see it glinting under the light. $50,000 for 1 day's work. It wasn't just money, it was a reminder of how much value they had only learned to measure after losing everything. By late evening, the apartment had gone quiet. The only sound was the steady tick of the clock above the stove. I poured a glass of water, stared at the check again, and finally picked up my phone. Charles answered on the first ring. "Evelyn, I've thought about your offer," I said. His tone lifted, hopeful. "You'll come in 1 day." I replied, "Tomorrow. I'll walk you through the renewal process, the state filings, the insurance reinstatements. After that, I'm done. Anything you need. There's one condition." Silence. Then, cautiously, "All right. Derek Hastings needs to be there." He hesitated. I could almost hear the calculation in his head, the discomfort, the ego, the politics. "Evelyn, he's no longer with the company. Then bring him back for 1 day." I said, "As a consultant, an observer, whatever title you want. He should understand the system he dismissed. He should see exactly what he called dead weight." Another long pause. Then Charles exhaled. "Done, I'll make it happen." "Good," I said softly. "This isn't about revenge, it's about clarity. For both of you." He started to speak again, but I cut him off gently. "1 day, 1 fee. No contracts, no rehires, no promises." "Understood." I ended the call and placed the phone beside the envelope. Murphy was asleep near the window, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. Outside, the evening light had turned gold, washing the room in a calm I hadn't felt in years. I folded the check, slid it into my wallet, and looked out toward the horizon where the city skyline caught the last of the sun. Tomorrow, I would return to the place that had underestimated me on my terms. The next morning broke with a thin layer of mist clinging to the streets. I dressed simply black slacks, white blouse, hair pulled back. It felt strange putting on work clothes again, like slipping into an old version of myself that no longer fit. When I arrived at Pinnacle Solutions, the glass facade reflected a sky the color of steel. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, just as it had the day I left. The receptionist's eyes widened when she saw me. "Ms. Mercer, we've been expecting you." Conference room 3 was at the end of the hall. Through the glass wall, I saw Charles Vega standing by the table, shoulders tight, eyes hollow from sleeplessness. Beside him sat Derek Hastings, or rather what was left of him, his tie askew, eyes sunken, his confidence gone. I stepped inside. "Good morning." Charles nodded. "Thank you for coming." I placed my laptop on the table and began. "We'll start with the compliance renewal cycle." For 6 hours, the room became a classroom. I walked them through every system: how to file for state reauthorization, when to trigger insurance renewals, which agencies required live confirmation calls. I showed them the audit trail of 8 years' worth of documentation, every timestamp and every reminder Derek had ignored. Charles took notes furiously, filling page after page. Derek sat silent, his pen unmoving, his gaze fixed on the spreadsheets projected across the screen. At the 3rd hour, I addressed him directly. "Derek," I said, "you following this?" He looked up slowly. "Yes." His voice was rough. "I thought this was just paperwork. I didn't understand how it all worked together." "It's not paperwork," I said. "It's the foundation of your operations. Without it, the lights go out." He nodded, eyes lowered. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. Truly." I believed him, but it no longer mattered. The lesson wasn't for me. It was for him. By the end of the 6th hour, the system dashboards glowed green again. Every license renewed, every policy restored. I closed my laptop. Charles exhaled, a long sound of release. "You saved us." I shook my head. "No, Charles, I didn't save you." I slid my chair back and stood. "I showed you how to save yourselves." By the time I got home, the light outside had shifted to that soft, forgiving shade between afternoon and dusk. Murphy greeted me at the door, tail thumping against the wall, the simple rhythm of a creature untouched by ambition or failure. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter and exhaled, the kind of breath that leaves the body slower than it should. The apartment was just as I'd left it: quiet, orderly, untouched by the chaos that had swallowed the day. I changed into jeans and a sweater, poured a glass of water, and opened my laptop. The same folder that had followed me through 8 years of mornings and deadlines waited there: Pinnacle Insurance and Licensing, 214 emails. Every form, every reminder, every warning that had once kept an empire alive. I hovered over it for a moment, then moved it into an archive. The notification vanished, leaving the desktop clean. My inbox pinged almost immediately a message from Charles. The AG's office accepted our remediation plan. We're back in operation as of Monday. "Thank you, Evelyn." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened a job board I'd bookmarked weeks earlier. The listings scrolled past compliance roles, project coordination, firms with mission statements that still used words like integrity. I bookmarked a few, then closed the browser. Outside, the sprinklers came on right on schedule, the same sound I'd heard every evening since the day I was fired. The water arced across the lawn, caught the last streaks of sunlight, and fell in perfect rhythm. Murphy settled at my feet with a sigh. I ran a hand over his fur, the warmth grounding me back into the present. For the first time in a long while, there was nothing left to fix, no reminder to send, no system waiting for approval. Everything was exactly where it should be, both inside and outside the screen. Sometimes silence isn't revenge, it's justice arriving on schedule.